As part of a standard costing question, you may be asked to give possible reasons for the variances that you've calculated. So you're going to have to use some common sense. So just think of possible things that could have gone wrong to give you the variances. So once you've calculated all the variances, if they simply ask you to give possible reasons for any of the variances, focus on the biggest ones first. Don't leave out the big variances. If a variance is very small, it indicates that the problem is not that big. So start with the big ones first. They might ask you to give a number of reasons for each of the variances, so then you have to really think what could have gone wrong. So let's run through a couple of examples. And you'll see it's fairly straightforward. So let's think about material. We've got the price variance and we've got a usage variance. So what could have gone wrong if we have an unfavorable price variance? So one thing that I see often with students is they write the reason for the unfavorable or negative price variance is because we paid more than what we should have paid. Now that's not answering the question, that's not giving a reason. Remember, if you go to your boss and he asks you, why is there a negative price variance? And you tell him, well, we paid more than what we should have paid. He's going to say, yes, that's what I'm asking, but why did you pay more than what you should have paid? So you must always think, will the person that you're explaining this variance to say, yes, so what? So why do you say that? So you need to say, why did you pay more than what you should have paid? So reasons could have been that we didn't take advantage of bulk discounts maybe, so maybe we didn't buy on time, or maybe we ran out of stock and we had to buy in a rush, so last minute orders might be more expensive, or there was just a price increase that we didn't anticipate, so then it's out of our control. So remember, some of the reasons will be within the control of whoever is responsible. Like the responsible person for the price variance would be the purchasing manager. Now if it's within his control, then we can hold him responsible. If it's something like an inflation increase or some price increase for electricity that we didn't expect, then we can't really hold that person responsible. But it's good then to identify what was the reason for that specific variance. Then what about the material usage variance? So again, you can't say we used more than what we should have used. That is just saying we've got a negative variance in more words. So you must give a reason, why did we use more than what we should have used? So maybe the material was of poor quality, so we had to do a lot of redos, or some of it broke while we handled it and we needed to use more of it. So how could we corroborate or prove that it was poor quality? Well, we could look at the material price and maybe we have a favorable price variance. So that indicates we purchased cheaper products, possibly at poorer quality. So always look for these relationships between different variances. And the more you can support your comments, the more marks you will be able to earn. It just also shows the marker that you know what you're talking about and you're not just guessing or rambling off a list of things that could go wrong. Another thing that's important is always try to relate it to the specific scenario. So if they give you a lot of background information in the scenario, so it's a specific company in a specific industry and they mention a lot of stuff that went wrong and other stuff that went better and so on, use that information in your discussion, because that shows that you can apply what you've learned and you didn't just memorize a list of possible reasons for possible variances. So other things for usage variance, it could have been new staff or junior staff working with it, so they didn't know what they were supposed to do and there's more wastage, etc. So that's just possible reasons for the material variances. What about labor? So we've got a labor rate variance and a labor efficiency variance. So again, remember, the efficiency variance is the same as a quantity variance and the rate variance is the same as a price variance. So the labor rate variance is usually not within the control of the company, and this might be negotiated with unions. That's usually the HR's responsibility. They could try to increase the rate in order to motivate staff to be more productive, and that might show up in a positive efficiency variance. So if we spend less time than what we should have spent, it could have been as a result of paying them more. So look for those relationships between the two. You can't just say in the efficiency variance they were unhappy because their rate were reduced, but then it doesn't show up as a positive rate variance. So just always make sure that what you say makes sense and doesn't contradict itself. So the efficiency variance for labor, so say if they've worked more hours than what they should have worked, that's not the reason, that is the problem. So we need to find a reason for that. And again, it could have been poor quality materials that they had to work with, so they had to do a lot of rework. That would probably show up in the usage variance and in the price variance. It could have been a favorable price variance because we saved buying poor quality materials. What other reasons for labor efficiency variance? So they could have been demotivated by something that happened. So look at the scenario, whether there's some information on that, or there could have been a strike, or the electricity could have been out for a couple of hours or days. So look for information in the scenario, because that shows that you can apply your knowledge in practice. Overheads, well, overheads is a bit more tricky. So for variable overheads, think again, so what could have been the reason for the rate variances? So that's items like electricity or maintenance. So the line items would have to be investigated in more detail to see whether there were some increases that we didn't expect, or something that caused an increase in the cost. So for electricity, for instance, there could have been an unexpected increase of 20%. Now that's out of the control of the company, but we can identify then by investigating further. If you look at the efficiency variance for variable overheads, well, there it solely depends on what basis we use to allocate it. So remember, overheads are allocated because it's indirect costs. So what basis of allocation did we use? So if we use labor hours and we have a negative efficiency variance for labor, we'll automatically have a negative efficiency variance for variable overheads. And then just something to look out for, if our variable overheads are allocated on the basis of units. So if we actually produce 1,000 units, we will allocate our overheads to them based on that 1,000 units. So there will be no variance, no efficiency variance, if we allocate variable overheads on the basis of units. So just look out for that. If you find that you calculated a variance and it's 0, it doesn't mean you necessarily made a mistake. It could be that there are just no variances. And then our selling and distribution expenses, there again you have to think of reasons. So if it's they could have paid a higher commission maybe to motivate the staff. So you could look at that they sell more or less than what they budgeted for to support that answer. Or it could have been any other expense that relates to selling and distribution, like for instance the fuel cost for deliveries, or if they switch from railway deliveries, or like by train to air deliveries, so then it might be more expensive. So there might have been a negative variance or unfavorable variance for the selling and distribution expenses. So again, always think back, look at your scenario. If you don't find anything in the scenario, if it's a very plain scenario with just numbers, then you're going to have to go for generic stuff. Then you can go to this list that you've memorized and just make sure that you explain it clearly. But if there's a rich scenario with lots of information, try to apply that to your solution. And so so again, you have to be guided by the mark allocation. So if it's only a few marks, like 5 or 10 marks, and there's no scenario, there's no story behind the question, then you're going to have to use this generic list of possible reasons for your variances. If it's a very long scenario with lots of stories and things that went wrong in the company, etc., and it's for more marks, then you have to be very practical and you have to apply what your reasons for the variances to the specific scenario.